I paid $10,000 for a family vacation to watch my brother-in-law take credit for everything in front of my wife's entire family. What he didn't know was that I'd kept every receipt, every booking confirmation, and every message where he promised to pay his share, but never did. By the end of that dinner, he would never freeload off me again. It was our annual family vacation, something my wife Sarah and I had started organising 3 years ago when her parents hit their 40th anniversary. This year, we'd rented a stunning beach house in the Outer Banks. 3 stories of oceanfront luxury with enough bedrooms for all the siblings and their kids. I'd spent months finding the perfect place, coordinating dates with everyone, and quietly handling most of the expenses myself. Mark, my wife's older brother, had always been the golden child. Harvard MBA, flashy job title, expensive clothes. What the family didn't know was that his lifestyle was mostly smoke and mirrors, leveraged credit, and careful image management. I knew because he'd asked me for loans twice in the past year, just until bonus season, he'd said. I'm still waiting for repayment. I should have seen the warning signs earlier that week. Mark arrived a day late in a rental car he couldn't afford, bringing expensive wine he put on my tab at the local shop. He kept making comments about our treat whenever someone thanked us for the vacation. I noticed he was positioning himself as co-host, subtly at first, then more boldly as the days passed. Another perfect sunset from the deck I picked out, he said on the 3rd evening, clapping me on the shoulder while everyone gathered for drinks. I raised an eyebrow but said nothing. I'd actually spent weeks researching houses with the perfect western exposure for sunset views. What do you mean, the deck you picked out? Sarah asked. Well, when we were looking at rental options, Mark said smoothly, I told Jason this was the one with the best view, remember? Sarah looked confused. I don't remember. Honey, remember how stressed you were with work? I handled most of the booking details with Mark. He gave her a patronizing smile that made my stomach turn. I took a slow sip of my beer. This was new territory. Mark had always been competitive with me, always needed to one-up me in conversations, but he'd never outright lied about something so easily disproven. I could have corrected him right there, pulled out my phone and shown everyone the dozens of houses I'd researched, the spreadsheet I'd made comparing amenities and prices. But something told me to wait, to watch. The next morning, I noticed Mark giving his parents a tour of the property as if he were the host. And this master suite I made sure to reserve for you guys, I overheard him saying. Jason wanted to put you in the smaller room downstairs, but I insisted. My father-in-law, Bill, patted his son on the back. Always looking out for us, Mark. The reality? I had specifically chosen the upstairs master for them, because Bill had knee problems, and the upper floor had the best ocean views. The smaller room downstairs was actually the second master suite that Sarah and I had taken. I felt a slow burn starting in my chest. Not just anger at the lies, but disappointment. I'd always tried to have a good relationship with Sarah's family. I wasn't wealthy like them. I'd worked my way through state college and built my IT consulting business from nothing. I couldn't compete with Mark's Harvard pedigree or his corporate title, but I'd always been honest about who I was. That afternoon, while everyone was at the beach, I sat on the deck with my laptop and started gathering evidence. I pulled up emails between the rental agency and myself. I found the initial deposit from my bank account, $3,500. Then the final payment, $6,500. I found the grocery receipts from the massive shopping trip I'd done before everyone arrived, $850. The liquor store receipt for stocking the bar, $425. The booking for the deep-sea fishing trip scheduled for tomorrow, $1,200. The deposit for the private chef coming for the final dinner, $1,000. Then I went through my text history with Mark. There it was, 3 months ago. Hey, Jason, things are tight this quarter with a new house renovation. Can I pay you for my family's share after the trip? Should get my bonus by then. And my reply, no problem, I've got it covered. There were more messages. Mark asking if I could handle the fishing trip deposit because his card was acting up. Mark thanking me for covering the chef because he had temporary cash flow issues. I created a folder on my phone with screenshots of everything. Then I forwarded the rental confirmation and payment receipts to my email, making sure I had backups. I wasn't planning to use any of this. I just wanted it ready if needed. That evening, Mark's performance continued. At dinner, he ordered expensive wine for the table without consulting me, then made a show of giving his credit card to the waiter while saying, I insist on getting this one, Jason. You've done so much already. The card was declined, of course. I pretended not to notice when he quickly substituted another one, which went through. Must be some mix-up with the first card. He laughed it off. Been spending too much on this vacation. Sarah squeezed my hand under the table. She knew. She'd seen the credit card statements, helped me plan the budget for this trip. She knew exactly who was paying for what. But she also knew her brother. Knew confronting him would only create drama. Not worth it, she whispered to me later that night. Let him play his little games. But the next day, Mark crossed a line. We were all gathered at the marina for the deep-sea fishing trip I'd booked months ago. The captain approached our group. Which one of you is Jason? He asked. Before I could respond, Mark stepped forward. Actually, I'm the one who organised this. Jason's just part of our group. The captain looked confused, checking his clipboard. I have a Jason Miller who put down the deposit and made the arrangements. Right, that's me, I said, stepping forward. Mark's confused. No, Mark laughed, putting his arm around the captain's shoulders like they were old friends. There must be some mix-up in your paperwork. I handled all the arrangements through my assistant. Jason here is my brother-in-law. Great guy, but not exactly the organising type. Everyone was watching now. My nephews and nieces, my in-laws, Sarah's sisters, and their husbands. Mark, I said quietly, you know that's not true. Come on, Jason, he said with that condescending smile. No need to be embarrassed. Everyone knows I'm handling the finances for this trip. It's not a big deal. I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, exactly. More like clarity. I looked at Mark, really looked at him. The expensive watch, the designer sunglasses, the carefully casual outfit that probably cost more than my first car. And behind it all, the desperation. The need to be seen as the provider, the successful one, the alpha. Whatever you say, Mark, I replied, my voice neutral. I turned to the captain. Let's get going, shall we? The day on the water should have been perfect. Clear skies, good fishing, cold beer. But Mark's behaviour cast a shadow over everything. He kept making comments about his charter, giving instructions to the crew as if he were in charge, telling stories about previous fishing trips he'd organised that I knew were fabrications. When my father-in-law caught a sizable mahi-mahi, Mark was there with his phone, taking pictures, acting as if he'd personally made this moment happen. That's why I chose this specific charter, Dad, he boasted. They know exactly where the big ones are. I stayed quiet, helping the kids with their fishing rods, bringing drinks to Sarah and her mum, enjoying the ocean despite everything. Sarah kept giving me concerned looks, but I just shrugged. I was done competing with Mark. I was done trying to correct his narrative. I had a different plan now. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, Sarah confronted me in our room. You can't let him keep doing this, she said. He's taking credit for everything you've done. I know, I replied, scrolling through my phone. Then why aren't you saying anything? I showed her the folder I'd created. All the receipts, all the messages, all the evidence. Tomorrow is our last night, I said. The private chef is coming. Mark's been telling everyone it was his idea, that he's paying for it as a special treat. And I think it's the perfect time to set the record straight. She looked worried. Jason, my family, they can be difficult about money and status. Mark has always been the golden child, I know, I finished for her. But this isn't about money or status. It's about honesty. It's about respect. She was quiet for a moment, then nodded. You're right. Just be gentle, okay? I'm always gentle, I smiled. That's why your brother thinks he can walk all over me. The final dinner was set for 7:00 p.m. The chef arrived at 5:00 to begin preparations. I greeted him, showed him the kitchen, and discreetly confirmed that my name was on all the paperwork and payment information. Then I helped set up the dining room, arranging place settings for all 12 of us around the large table overlooking the ocean. Mark came downstairs at 6:30, already dressed like he was heading to a yacht club in his linen shirt and designer chinos. He immediately began hovering around the chef, asking questions about the menu, making suggestions, acting every bit the host. I wanted to make sure we had a truly special final night, he announced as everyone gathered for pre-dinner drinks. This chef comes highly recommended. Not cheap, but you all are worth it. I caught Sarah's eye across the room. She gave me a small nod. The dinner was magnificent. Fresh, local seafood, perfectly prepared steaks for those who wanted them, vegetables from nearby farms, the wine flowed freely, expensive bottles that Mark made a show of selecting from the wine fridge that I had stocked. As we finished the main course, Mark stood up, glass in hand. This was it, the moment I'd been waiting for. I'd like to propose a toast, he said, his voice carrying that practiced public speaking cadence he'd perfected over years of corporate presentations. To family, to this incredible week together in this amazing house that I found for us. A few murmurs of agreement around the table. My father-in-law raised his glass. When I started planning this vacation, Mark continued, I wanted it to be special. Mom and Dad, after 43 years of marriage, you deserve nothing but the best. That's why I spared no expense. I took a slow sip of water, watching him. From the deep-sea fishing to tonight's dinner, I wanted to create memories that would last a lifetime. It's been my pleasure to treat everyone to this week away. He was in full performance mode now, basking in the admiration around the table. Sarah's mother wiped away a tear. Her younger sister was smiling appreciatively. Even Sarah's father, usually stoic, looked moved. So here's to family, Mark concluded, raising his glass higher. And to many more vacations like this one. My treat, of course. Cheers, everyone echoed, glasses clinking. I set my water glass down gently. The room felt warm, expectant. All eyes had moved from Mark to me, the other supposed host of the vacation. I was expected to say something now, to add my own toast, to thank Mark for his generosity, to play my supporting role in his fiction. I'd like to say something too, I said, standing slowly. Mark's smile faltered just slightly. Of course, Jason, the floor is yours. I took a deep breath. This wasn't about humiliating Mark. This was about truth, about respect. This has been a wonderful week, I began. Seeing everyone together, watching the kids play on the beach, sharing meals like this one. It's what family is all about. Nods around the table. Mark's smile returned, thinking I was following his script. I want to thank everyone for making the time to be here. I know it's not easy coordinating schedules, especially with kids in school and work commitments. I paused, looking directly at Mark now. I also want to clarify something. There seems to be some confusion about who organised and paid for this vacation. The room went silent. Mark's smile froze. I've been happy to host everyone this week. The house rental, the groceries, the fishing charter, tonight's chef. These were my contributions to our family time together. Mark let out a forced laugh. Jason's being modest. We split everything, of course. I reached for my phone, opened the folder I'd prepared. Actually, Mark, we didn't. I have all the receipts right here. The $10,000 house rental paid from my account. The $2,200 fishing charter. Tonight's $1,000 chef service. I turned to the rest of the family. I'm not saying this because I want credit or thanks. I'm saying it because I value honesty in our family relationships. Mark's face had gone from confident to panicked. Jason, this is inappropriate. Nobody wants to discuss finances at dinner. I agree, I said calmly. Which is why I've been confused by your repeated claims to have paid for everything. I scrolled through my phone and continued. I also have our text conversations where you asked me to cover your family's portion of the trip because things were tight this quarter, and where you asked me to handle the fishing charter because your card was acting up. The room was dead silent now. Sarah's mother looked confused. Her father was frowning deeply. The kids, sensing tension, had gone quiet. Mark, his father said finally. Is this true? Mark's face flushed red. Dad, Jason is twisting things. We had an understanding. What understanding? I asked, still keeping my voice level. That I would pay and you would take credit? This is ridiculous, Mark sputtered. You're just jealous because my career has been more successful than yours. Always trying to show me up. Mark, Sarah interrupted sharply. Stop it. Jason is telling the truth and you know it. So you're taking his side. Mark turned on his sister. After everything I've done for this family? What exactly have you done? Sarah's father asked, his voice heavy with disappointment. Besides lie, apparently. The chef chose that moment to appear with dessert. Reading the room, he quietly set down the trays and retreated to the kitchen. Mark looked around the table, searching for allies and finding none. His wife was staring at her plate, clearly mortified. His children looked confused and uncomfortable. I don't have to sit here and be attacked, he said, throwing his napkin on the table and standing up. This entire conversation is beneath me. Mark, sit down, his father commanded. We're going to talk about this like adults. There's nothing to talk about, Mark insisted, but he reluctantly sat back down. Jason, my father-in-law turned to me. I want to thank you for your generosity this week. If I had known you were covering everything, I would have insisted on contributing. It was my pleasure, I said sincerely. I wanted everyone to have a good time. I just didn't want to continue with this fiction that Mark was creating. Understandable, he nodded, then turned to his son. Mark, I'm disappointed. Not because you couldn't afford to contribute, but because you lied. You took credit for another man's generosity. Mark stared at his plate, I was going to pay him back. When? I asked. Like you paid me back for the loans last year. Mark's wife looked up sharply at this. What loans? The facade was crumbling now. Mark's carefully constructed image of success was falling apart in front of the people whose admiration he craved most. Let's enjoy dessert, Sarah suggested, trying to ease the tension. We can discuss this more tomorrow. But the damage was done. The rest of the meal proceeded in awkward silence, with occasional forced attempts at conversation. Mark barely touched his dessert. His earlier confidence completely evaporated. After dinner, he and his wife had a heated discussion behind their closed bedroom door. The next morning, they announced they were leaving early, citing a work emergency. Nobody believed it, but everyone was relieved. As they loaded their luggage into their rental car, Mark approached me on the driveway. You didn't have to embarrass me in front of everyone, he said, his voice low and angry. You embarrassed yourself, Mark, I replied. All you had to do was be honest. I was going to pay you back. This wasn't about the money. It was about respect. He looked at me for a long moment, then shook his head. You don't understand what it's like, having to maintain a certain image. You're right, I don't. I've never pretended to be something I'm not. He got into his car without another word. As they drove away, I felt no satisfaction, only a quiet resolve. The rest of the day was surprisingly pleasant. Without Mark's constant posturing, everyone relaxed. Sarah's father took me aside and insisted on writing me a check for his share of the vacation expenses. I tried to refuse, but he was adamant. I won't have my daughter's husband covering everything, he said firmly. That's not how family works. I accepted the check, touched by the gesture. We spent our last day on the beach, building sandcastles with the kids, taking one last swim in the ocean. That evening, sitting on the deck watching the sunset, the one from the house I had actually chosen, Sarah's father joined me with 2 beers. I owe you an apology, he said, handing me a bottle. For what? For not seeing Mark clearly. For maybe favouring him over the years? He took a long sip of his beer. Success isn't about the show you put on. It's about integrity, about taking care of your family, honestly. I nodded, watching the orange sun sink into the horizon. You're a good man, Jason, he continued. Sarah chose well. That meant more to me than any status competition with Mark ever could. We packed up the next morning, cleaning the house and loading our cars. As I did the final walkthrough, making sure nothing was left behind, I found Mark's Harvard Business School mug in the kitchen cabinet, the one he'd been drinking from all week while dispensing his business wisdom. He must have forgotten it in his hasty departure. I considered leaving it there for the cleaning service to discard. Instead, I wrapped it carefully and packed it in my bag. Maybe someday Mark would be ready to have an honest relationship with his family. Maybe someday he'd stop measuring his worth by the impressions he created. When that day came, I'd return his mug. On the drive home, Sarah reached over and squeezed my hand. You okay? She asked. Better than okay, I replied. I feel lighter. I'm sorry about Mark. Don't be. It's not your fault. I know, but still, he's my brother. And he always will be, I said. But from now on, our relationship is going to be based on truth, not pretense. She smiled. No more financing his ego. No more financing anything without honesty in return. I agreed. The next family vacation would be different. Maybe smaller, maybe less extravagant, but authentic. And if Mark wanted to be part of it, he'd have to bring his real self, not the fiction he'd created. Sometimes standing up for yourself isn't about winning or revenge. It's simply about drawing a line and saying, beyond this point, only truth is acceptable. It's about valuing yourself enough to demand basic respect. I still have Mark's Harvard mug on a shelf in my home office. It reminds me that appearances can be deceiving. The true worth isn't measured in status symbols or grand gestures. Sometimes it's measured in quiet integrity, in doing what's right without needing credit. And sometimes when someone tries to take credit for your sunset, the best revenge is simply to keep enjoying the view.